Earlier this year, Tennessee was an offensive juggernaut that made them look as if they were a legitimately national championship title contender. And they have not been that the last 3 weeks, the last 3 games, I should say. But they have been markedly not as good as they had been previously. They have not been remotely close to what they were offensively. In their first 3 games, they scored 69, 51, and 71. Obviously, those were against quote-unquote lesser teams, inferior opponents. One of them was North Carolina State, who was ranked at the time and is still 3-2 in a Power 5 conference. So I'm not going to completely dissuade that as if it's, UT, Chattanooga, and Kent State. Yes, those are markedly inferior opponents. But in the last 3 games, they scored 25 against Oklahoma, who's got a very good defense, 14 in a loss at Arkansas, and 23 in overtime against Florida. Now, I'm the chief of, it's hard to win on the road in conference. I will bang that drum until the end of time. It is. But Tennessee's better than Arkansas. Tennessee is a gigantic step better than Arkansas, and they lost that game. But the offense has been borderline anemic recently. So what are the issues? I dove into the numbers a little bit. In the first 3 games of the season, and again, get in the comments and tell me, that was against Kent State. I know that. I get that. I understand that. But that's supposed to be kind of your tune-up. That's the precursor to what the big boys are going to do when you play football. When you look at the first 3 games, Nico Iamaleava was 48 of 67 for 698 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. In the last 3 games, he's 46 of 76. So they've thrown it a few more times. He's completed a few less passes for 521 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So a pretty big drop-off in yardage, a pretty big drop-off in touchdowns. So that would lead you to believe, hey, the quarterback is not playing as well as he was before. And I think that's fair and justifiable criticism, that it's backed up by science, right? Nico Iamaleava is not playing as well as he once was. And that's to be expected. And I know that that's difficult to hear and see because against Iowa in the bowl game, Tennessee looked like the sky was the limit with Nico Iamaleava. He was getting his first opportunities really to play. And when that's your first opportunity to showcase yourself, not only to your fan base, but then also to like a national audience of, hey, look what I can do. Because in 2023, the only game he played was against Iowa. Or I guess the only time he played real kind of meaningful, he played against Vanderbilt. But his first look was against Iowa, a top 25 team that was known to have a really, really, really good defense. And you beat them 35-0. He had 3 rushing touchdowns and threw for 65% completion percentage. And when you are doing that as a freshman, that makes you look badass. So coming into this season, the expectations get to be really high because I saw what you can be. When that's the first time I get a good look at you and I see 3 touchdowns on the ground, it kind of turns you into like, oh man, this guy, dual threat. And he hasn't necessarily ran the ball, I think, as much as he's ran it a little bit more than I would have liked to have, or maybe not liked to have seen, that I expected him to run more, for more yardage, be more dual threat. He's got a rushing touchdown. He had 3 in one game against Iowa and a rushing touchdown this season. But it's all to be expected. Like when you are that young and that inexperienced, despite what I saw in the bowl game, you're going to have growing pains. And I think that's part of the problem for Tennessee right now is there's growing pains. But also, it's bigger than just the quarterback. And that is something that I don't think we talk about enough. One, in college football, but in football as a whole, it is not only the quarterback. It doesn't have to just be this guy is not playing well. We're playing as well as we'd like him to. That's why we're not playing good offensively. There's more to it than that. When you look at Tennessee in the run game, it's significantly worse, the production, than what they had from the first 3 games to the second 3 games. In the first 3 games, Dylan Sampson, 45 carries, 357 yards, 9 touchdowns. In the last 3 games, 73 carries, 342 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And believe me, when you hear those numbers, right, like we are gushing over Ashton Jeanty, or at least I'm gushing over Ashton Jeanty, the Boise State running back, because his numbers are fantastic. Dylan Sampson has just as many touchdowns as Ashton Jeanty does. And he's got half the yardage and half the average yards per carry. And believe me, I understand the idea of saying, like, in 3 games having 6 rushing touchdowns is a downturn, is like, what? But that's the case. 45 carries for 357 yards in the first 3 games, 73 carries for 342 yards in the last 3 games. That's a gigantic chunk of you are running the ball significantly more and getting significantly less per carry out of it. So your quarterback's not playing as well, and your running back's not playing as well. If you connect those 2 dots, what do those 2 dots tell you is going wrong? It's the offensive line. Tennessee's offensive line is not playing as well as it did in the first 3 games. And I understand that that's going to happen when you go from UT Chattanooga, NC State, Kent State, to Arkansas, to Florida, to Oklahoma. Your offensive line isn't going to be as good as it was in the first 3 games against inferior opponents. But when I talk often about the game of football being a simple game down to its core, you can make it really, really intricate and exquisite and unique and difficult. But ultimately, the point is, my offense wants to do things your defense doesn't want me to do. My defense wants to stop your offense from doing things you'd like to do. And there's an 11 versus 11 one-on-one battles, play after play after play. And sometimes I win, sometimes you win. And right now, not right now, but every time, half the battle is in the trenches. And when you don't play well in the trenches, especially in the SEC, it is going to be difficult to move the football, put points on the board. Tennessee is not playing as well offensively as they'd like to. The quarterback's not up to snuff. The running game has gotten worse. I think if you start eyeing those things together and go, wait a second, it is that the offensive line isn't playing as well as you'd like it to. Now, I don't know if that is defenses have started to figure out Tennessee, because they do. To the average football viewer, do they run a overly unique offense? No. But they do in the grand scheme of things. It's not all air raid. It's not all spread. It's not all West Coast. It's not all spread heavy duty. It's a mixture of a lot of stuff. When they throw the ball, they are looking to either make you cover the whole field horizontally with quick screens, with jailbreaks, with tunnel screens, with bubble screens, RPOs, or make you cover the whole field vertically. We are going up the field, baby. We are going to chuck the pigskin. And when you start to commit to that and you put 5 players or less in the box, we're going to run the ball at you. It's predicated on what the defense is going to give us. You can't go broke taking a profit. But when you're not making a profit because you're not getting push up front, or you're running the ball decidedly more because teams say, I'm going to commit to stopping the pass game, and then you're therefore running the ball more, it's just a bad recipe for, at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to outscore folks. Tennessee's kind of getting away from that a little bit. Sometimes you just got to put more points on the board than the other team and figure it out. And so when you look at the schedule and you're like, okay, we scored 25 against Oklahoma. Oklahoma's got a very good defense. Arkansas, you put 14 on the board. You can't score 3 touchdowns against Arkansas. You got to really reevaluate what's going on. Florida is not nearly as bad as people think Florida is. The record is deceptive. Are they 3-3? Yes. Their wins are not against super great opponents, and they might be the 25th best team in the country. But when you play like 8 teams who are in spots 20 through 1, it makes your schedule look bad. But you got pushed to overtime and struggled to score against a Florida defense. And now you're going into the 3rd Saturday in October wondering, I don't know what we are and I don't know what Alabama is. And we'll have that conversation later in the week. But what is wrong with Tennessee's offense? I don't know if it is a personnel issue. I don't know if it is defenses have figured it out or have started to really put together a nice game plan to defend Tennessee. Because Josh Heupel burst onto the scene. They're chucking the pigskin all around. They're running for hundreds of yards, and things are going really well. And now that there's lots of film out there, maybe there's, just ridiculous tendencies. I can't dive into the football. I can't dive into the film quite that deep. But I do know that the quarterback's not playing as well, wide receivers aren't playing as well, running backs aren't playing as well. Running backs production is down significantly. Quarterback production down significantly. That generally means we're not playing as well up front as we'd like to. And whether or not that's an easy fix, I don't know how much easier it gets when you still have Alabama, Georgia, and Vanderbilt on the schedule. They do have time to figure it out, but they can't afford to lose to both Alabama and Georgia, in my opinion. So, probably need to figure it out by Saturday. Whether they can do that or not, we'll find out. Want to know your comments in the comment box below? Drop them. Let me know what you think's wrong with Tennessee. If you're a Tennessee fan, or if you are a Arkansas fan or a Florida fan that just saw them barely beat you or you beat them. What did you see? Want to hear from you in the comments down below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.